hazy process on what project goes first or what project gets the priority. Yeah. But in a perfect setting, dapat nga yung RDC, no? Because the RDC is the one that knows the problems and the infrastructure requirements on the ground. No? So sana moving forward, we can get that 20% to more than 20%. No? Yeah.
Yes, in short, natapos na po sa DPWH. It's now in the DBM. How would this office, which may we know the specific office in DPWH that is in charge of vetting all of these proposals? Is it planning?
It's called Planning Service.
Yes.
Mr.
So
President.
this office, will it actually vet the correctness, the accuracy of all the proposals? It should. It should.
Yeah, it should. In fact, they should be what they call shovel ready. No, meron pong feasibility study, meron na pong lupa, meron na pong program of work.
Yes.
So it has to be shovel ready or implementation ready.
Mr. President, you mentioned 30,000. Is it accurate?
Yes,
Are
Mr.
there
more or less.
30,000 projects in the NEP 2026, which is now the GAB we are studying?
These are ongoing projects, Mr. President.
No, the proposals for 2026, how many items are these, Mr. President?
For 2026, more or less about 15 to 16,000, Mr.
16,000 more or
President. About
less.
16,000.
Yes.
On the upside.
Yes, thank you. May we know, Mr. President, whether this vetting, the correctness and the accuracy of the 16,000 proposals was actually done by the DPWH, because the planning services is supposedly in charge. We have a team in charge in every region and every engineering district. Was the correctness and accuracy of the 16,000 items actually vetted? Because we are funding each and every item. We're using taxpayers' money for each and every item, whether it emanated from a district engineering office or a regional office or the central office. I saw the confusion earlier in Senator Lacson's interpellations. I seldom see Senator Lacson quit. But earlier tonight, I saw him very frustrated and stopped the questioning. Thus, these questions. Did the DPWH actually vet the correctness and accuracy of all the items in the NEP which are carried in the GAB, which we are studying tonight?
The straight answer, Mr. President, is no. That's why when when those projects came here to the Senate, I think you were there during the DBCC. We even flagged the DBM about the red flags. No? We identified 6 red flags, and because of those red flags, the DPWH endeavored to correct all of those. But we saw some more actually after the second hearing, and those red flags were completely removed and retitled also, or they gave us the coordinates and the station number and the coordinates, and they also retitled some of the projects to make it more accurate, Mr. President. So in other words, dito po nangyari sa Senate yung vetting. No, in short, nag-vet ho tayo dito ng 3 times.
Mr. President, as you yourself said, there are 16,000 items. We only had several weeks to vet this. We could not vet the 16,000 items, Mr. President. We have to rely on the department to put their house in order, Mr. President. And as you yourself said, everything emanates from the Department of Public Works. And then they submit it to the DBM for proposed funding, which becomes the President's budget, which is a national expenditure program. And so if your honor says that there was no vetting or no complete orderly confirmation of proposals from the district and from the region of the new team. How does the DPWH determine that the proposed projects would not be duplicates, which you saw all of it and you took it out thanks to your eagle eyes? But even earlier, there were seemingly same titled projects that Senator Lacson had shown. How are we assured that the past mistakes are not carried over in what we are discussing tonight, which we will eventually approve and fund by the billions? You check the DPWH chart, who is in charge of the list.
Actually, Mr. President, even after three vettings here in the Senate, we still saw a few items that we removed worth about 1.2 billion pesos, Mr. President. But we cannot say it with certainty that the projects for 2026 were completely vetted in a sense that those projects have feasibility studies or those projects have accurate program of work kasi late na ho binigay sa atin dito. But what we can guarantee is there's no more duplicate projects, there's no more repetitive projects. All projects have station numbers. So we minimize the risk of abuse and those projects being corrupted, Mr. President. So moving forward, the Secretary has vowed to reform the whole process, Mr. President. The whole process will be completely reformed, starting with making sure that the projects being proposed to be included in the NEP will be vetted properly at the DPWH level. Meron niyang feasibility study, meron program of work, meron niyang mga supporting documents para pagdating ho dito sa atin, maayos na ho.
Yes, thank you for that, Mr. President. You said moving forward, I believe that the Secretary and his team are referring to the NEP of 2027, but we are discussing the NEP of 2026 and the HGAB, and we are funding it by the hundreds of billions. And so that is what we're discussing. And I wanted to be assured that what we are funding, to which we will affix our signatures, have been vetted for every line, for every of the 16,000. So may I know whether the Undersecretary for Planning Services or the Secretary and his team were involved in the vetting of the project list, just to assure us that what we are discussing tonight and we will eventually fund and pass, we can answer to the people.
Mr. President, the NEP was not submitted by Secretary Dizon and his team. But after the Senate hearings here during the budget deliberation, we returned the items that were considered red flags and actually returned everything. And they returned to us a much more detailed line item of the different projects. So in other words, nagkaroon din sila ng vetting among themselves under the leadership of Secretary Vince. But yung talagang dapat yung ground up vetting, admittedly, that will be undertaken in 2027 because that will take time. No? If we're talking about 16,000 projects, you have to really look at each and every project, whether those projects have accurate program of work, meron siyang mga preliminary inspection, meron mga pre-work na gagawin. So, yun ang hindi ho ginawa ng team ni Secretary Dizon. But because they looked at the projects one by one, at least nami-minimize po yung risks natin na magkakaroon po ng problema.
I believe that there was the NEP revised. Would the NEP revised be the vetted projects already? And our discussions were based on the
Yes.
NEP revised.
The NEP revised was what happened. There was a NEP, and then they had an errata.
It was
They removed
returned, yes.
the flood control, and then once they submitted to us, we returned it back to them to give us the coordinates, and they also removed the duplicate and the repetitive projects.
So that was the NEP revised. So
yeah, I
how
will
would
call
you
it
describe it? It was semi-vetted, but not wholly or completely or totally vetted.
Mr. President, they had only 7 days to look
So
at each and
at
every
least
project.
I appreciate their candor and their honesty in saying that we are actually going to pass a budget which was not totally vetted and reviewed.
I think in terms of making sure that the projects are real and making sure that the location of the projects will be identified, yun po talagang reflected na yun in our Senate version. And then there are, because it was returned to their district engineers, nagkaroon rin po ng review on the papers. Now, as to, for example, to be honest about it, as to the feasibility of those projects, as to the details of their projects, dahil hindi ho sila gumawa nun,
Understood.
iba po yung
Yes.
hindi nila na-vet yun sila mismo.
Yes.
No?
Okay. I will no longer belabor that point. I understand where you're coming from, that the feasibility may not have been vetted, but at least the mistakes in terms of coordinates, etc., and the possibility for the risk for goals, etc., were deleted, hopefully. Hopefully, yes. Just for my understanding, Mr. President, per the DPWH charter and existing policies, is a DPWH secretary expected to vet each and every project?
No, not really, Mr. President, because of the sheer number of projects. Not the secretary, but there's also a level of where they vet the projects. For example, pag district level is a district engineer, pag regional, pag central po. So they also have thresholds in terms of vetting the projects.
Understood. And because you said that in the past 30,000, but this year 16,000, it is highly impossible, and you would have to rely on the district and the regional offices to do so. Yes. I now proceed, Mr. President, so we started with the DPWH and planning and how it goes to DBM. Now, my questions will focus on the release of DPWH funds from the GAA, assuming we pass all this and the General Appropriations Act is signed. May we be enlightened on the process for the request, approval, and the release of funds for DPWH projects? Again, everybody might think this is a very elementary question, but it is for the education of everyone, so that we are guided on the budgetary process, so that we understand how it emanates from an agency to DBM, how the lawmaker approves it, and how the DBM funds the projects.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Mr. President, there is what we call the direct release. Once the project is in the GAA, it will be released directly to the district engineering